We got our presiding members as well. Well, 4, I believe that's our quorum, so we'll go and get started. I'll move through our PowerPoint. First, call our order. Review of meeting minutes. I believe you've got a copy of your meeting minutes in front of you. Let me know if you have any issues with that, but otherwise, I think it starts with a motion and a second, and then we would take a roll call for approval.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second from Mr. Parton. We would do a roll call vote. We'll start with our presiding member.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Parton,
Yes.
Mr. Catnanny,
Here.
and do you vote to approve the meeting minutes?
Yes.
All right. And Mr. Gravely.
Yes.
All right, thank you. With that, the meeting minutes are approved. Our next item on the agenda is just a quick appeals update from me. I only have really one quick slide for everyone today, just talking about kind of the updated appeal process with the board. And if you have any questions for me anytime or anything kind of open discussion with our members, by all means, feel free to launch in. The first thing off the bat, I will say, is our new contested case procedures rules for State Board of Equalization appeals. These were largely technical updates. They removed references to the Assessment Appeals Commission, otherwise confirmed how notices of hearing are sent out, things of that nature. They did clarify those procedures for appealing an initial decision in order. So as you all probably know, with the commission no longer being part of the board, you can appeal an initial decision in order from an administrative judge to the board. It's optional before you go to Chancery Court, but you may do that. In which case, how the board has been handling those and how we officially handle it via our rules are, once the board receives the full technical record, that is the Administrative Procedures Division record that includes every item that's part of that file and a copy of that digital recording, so long as we have that full copy, I think it's 40 days beforehand, it will go on the next regular meeting of the board. In which case, it's just an agenda item, and any appeals that have been filed since the last board meeting that meet those requirements will be sent a notice. I'll send a certified mail notice to that taxpayer, as well as a copy to the assessor, making sure everyone's aware that meeting, that appeal is going to be up for consideration at that board meeting. The board meeting then convenes, hears any oral argument that's been requested from the parties, and then it will basically make a decision or otherwise choose to decline to exercise any review. So kind of just cemented that. It's all in our rules to kind of give that just a little more predictability, I think, for everyone in those proceedings, because it is pretty new still. Clarifies the process for amending to include subsequent tax years. It is the same process. Nothing has changed. It's still the same old. You can always email us, identify your subsequent tax years that you want included on your appeals. And also, you can also submit a new independent filing and get a new SBOE number for that tax year. I need to update the guidance that's on our webpage that talks specifically about how to do that, but it is the same process. The rules just kind of help clarify and reflect that same process that we've always done. Or if you have any questions about any of that, you can always feel free to reach out, but that's like kind of the biggest update for appeals is the kind of those, that rule process. Other than that, I will say our APD scheduling process, this is what I was kind of mentioning to you beforehand with appeal volume. So for appeal hearings, we are scheduling out extremely far ahead of time. We've scheduled things for, I think, April. I think I might even have some things scheduled for May of 2027. So we are scheduling pretty far in advance. As always, if you are ready to go to a hearing date, please let me know. Happy to give you the resources to do that. What we have found, though, is largely just sort of, while I work with APD to continually try to see what we can do to add hearing dates, add additional availability, what we have started to found is with, the bulk of appeals being with like a handful of counties, our most populous counties, they usually cannot be in two places or two hearings at the same time. So we are running up into some challenges with just the sheer volume of appeals from specific counties. and trying to do our best to work with all the parties involved to get a hearing date, timely that works for everyone. But it's been an interesting challenge this past year with just the sheer volume from, I think, particularly Davidson. Davidson and Shelby are typically our biggest appealed counties. I think just because they are two of our largest counties in the state, not to pick on them specifically, but. And so with that, for scheduling purposes, the assessor's office can usually only be in, maybe a residential and commercial appeal at the same time, but 2 commercials is usually they don't have the resources to be in those 2 places at the same time. So we're working with them to try to make sure we don't purposefully or accidentally kind of double book people the best we can, while still trying to make sure we are moving appeals quickly in a orderly fashion. So, that's kind of been the biggest update. Other than that, it's largely still the same process that we've been doing for the last few years. So if you resolve your appeal without needing a hearing date, by all means, send it to me in my office. We will process that, get that sorted for you. If you end up going or needing a hearing date, we still send those notices of hearing out 60 days ahead of time. That notice of, this is what you probably have heard my spiel on those Friday conferences, how this works, is once we send out that notice of hearing, your case is officially transferred over and assigned to an administrative judge. They assign you a case number for your entire appeal, which may include multiple parcels, multiple tax years. And then you stick with that judge throughout the rest of that process. So even if you end up getting scheduled or continued, or you address a legal part and then you have another hearing scheduled, you'll stick with that administrative judge largely through that process. And then you can always settle or withdraw at any time up until your hearing date and time. In which case, if you've been assigned to APD, you've got that notice of hearing, your case is transferred over, all of that will have to go through that administrative judge who will be assigned to your case. It's a little bit more, I think, more involved when you get over there and knowing who your judge is and getting ready those steps forward and having their APD case number assigned. By all means, always feel free to continue to contact my office, and if it's still, we will help clarify if it's with us, or we will direct you to APD accordingly. More than happy to help you with all that. But that scheduling process, used to be we were scheduling pretty close to today's date, but nowadays we are scheduling pretty far in advance. So that's the only other thing too. If you need a hearing date, by all means, let me know. Otherwise, we're still doing this. Sorry, I don't want to cough into the microphone. With that, the status and scheduling process is still the same. There's a lot of 2025 appeals that I don't think I've quite picked up for a status conference. I will be trying to pick those up eventually, largely probably scheduling those pretty far out. Those are always just my check-in, my way to make sure, I got that loose 3-strike rule. If we've gone through several conferences and you all are still working on it, by all means, I want to give you the time. But we want to make sure there's progress happening. So if there's, we've been there several times and it's getting a little bit long in the tooth, I am going to be trying to move you guys towards a hearing date, or otherwise trying to move that appeal forward. By all means, though, if you've got an appeal and you've got an appraisal and you're ready to go, you do not have to wait for that. We've got several tools on our website, as well as you can always email me. Happy to get that appeal scheduled promptly, or as promptly as possible. Just always let me know. But that's kind of how we've feels like it's been working for a lot of people. If you have any feedback on that process, by all means, I'm an email away. That's our big appeals update. So really more to come. Really, those new rules, again, didn't really change anything dramatically. Wasn't meant to change anything dramatically. It was mostly just clarify all our existing processes with that. Whoop, too far. The next thing on our agenda, so there's no action on that, was our appeals, or not our appeals update. Agent registration educational requirements. I think it's been a few years since we've kind of opened these and reviewed these. So I have a couple slides going over to refresh everyone's memory about what's required in order to become a registered agent. I guess, Arlene, remind me how many agents we have now.
107.
We have 107 individual agents. Again, remember that a firm cannot be an agent. It has to actually be an individual person who has to become that registered agent. We have 107 currently. I think we've waffled somewhere between 80 to 100, for the last few years. It is a renewal year, so we'll also kind of talk about renewal in a second. So as a refresher, to become a registered agent, you've got two options. Option one is set forth in Tennessee law. You pay that $200 registration fee. You also must have 4 years of experience in real property appraisal and or assessment valuation. So 4 years of working in the valuation field. And then you have to have completed not less than 120 classroom hours of academic instruction in which the primary substance relates to appraisal or assessment practices. And then finally, you have to make sure you have passed that Tennessee Certified Assessor exam. Option two is to pay that same $200 registration fee, but instead of having to prove the education requirements, you can meet all those requirements by showing you have a appraisal or assessment designation, a professional designation from an organization that qualifies and is or equal to that same 120 hours and Tennessee Certified Assessor exam. I think the two that we have confirmed for sure is the CMI ordered by the International Professionals in Taxation or a senior appraiser by the American Society of Appraisers. If we're missing any, let me know. I know there's also our rules dictate a whole process for identifying additional organizations who may, grow in the future as well. So there's always room for adding designations to that as well. So those are the requirements just to become a registered agent. Of course, once you are a registered agent, you must renew every even year. So it is a renewal year. So renew, I believe, before June 30th? Renew before June 30th. It's on our webpage. It's a same $200 renewal fee, which is partly set. So this is the requirements that are set by statute and partly by rule. And then you have to show 20 hours of basically continuing education credit that's been otherwise recognized by this panel or the Tennessee Real Estate Appraiser Commission. So I know some of you are appraisers, I think, at least not in Tennessee, maybe in other states. And so I know you are probably familiar with some of those appraiser requirements. But so that 20 classroom hours, and when you go through our renewal online platform, there'll be a place for you to upload those education requirements and show where all that comes from. And so this is really just, put this before the panel to just kind of review to make sure that you still think these are good requirements. Maybe they're bad requirements. Maybe it's too much, not enough. Has there been any issues with training or finding available hours out there? Gotta let me know. If you have no comments, if it otherwise meets everyone's needs, then fantastic. I just want to make sure we're touching that pulse, ever so often, making sure that we're not lagging behind and we're meeting those educational requirements. And always, don't have to wait for a meeting. You can always email me, let me know. Anything else on agent registration or agent renewal? Any comments from the panel? Anything else we can be doing for you?
You could have Interstate 24 between Chattanooga and Nashville widened to about 10 lanes. It'd help Davis out a lot.
All right, I'll look into that. Well, if that's also working, that's the kind of, I think, was the main point of this meeting. Wanted to get feedback from, this TARP panel. The one, I think, kind of interesting issue that we're continuing to see is that, this panel, one of your chief responsibilities is to discipline any agents who are not performing up to stuff. But paradoxically, we do have some people who are, trying to be an agent without becoming a registered agent, either because they don't qualify as a registered agent or whatever else may have you. By all means, I don't think this means anything against those people as much as it is they are not subject to discipline by this panel. And so the administrative judges, I think, have some tools to work with people on that. By and far, I will say if someone is not, it's pretty rare that we even come across that. But it is possible, but it's kind of a weird thing where we work with administrative judges to make sure that person either becomes a registered agent or gets an appropriate representative for that appeal before they continue and before we will sign off on any settlement or before the judge will let them present in an appeal hearing. And then finally, the biggest thing on here too is that we're trying to make sure it is also a renewal year for you to be reappointed to this body. If anyone does not want to be reappointed, I guess let me know. But I'm assuming by all you all being here today that you're fully committed to continue to serve on the TARP panel, and I genuinely appreciate your service. I don't hear anybody clamoring to say, take me off, Robin, take me off. I don't want to be here anymore. So I guess we'll keep you all on here for another year, another 2 years. They do usually renew every even year. So they'll probably do that the August meeting of this one, and then not again until 2028. With that was kind of the old major factors. That was like the main point of this meeting. I thought, someone would have more feedback for me on education and training. That's kind of like what we were trying to check in on. But if not, then I'll see y'all have any other questions for me about board operations or anything else. We'd otherwise just have adjournment. We didn't have anything else noticed on the meeting agenda, but
since you got everybody on there, this is Davis. Arlene, I just finished my 30 hours continuing ed last week. As soon as I get the data, I'll email it to you.
Okay.
above and beyond, you only needed 20.
Well, they're not going to let it count if you leave after 20 hours. They only allow you 10% missing. But there was an excellent course, the basic mapping, learning to do the tangents and then doing a curve and all those, complicated not geometry. What's the word I'm looking for? Where you use all the scales and whatnot. Anyway, that formula with the left-hand turn versus the right-hand turn curve, it's a bear. I feel for those students who actually had to take the exam. I was auditing the course.
No, yeah. I will say, I just heard this morning for appeals update. There was, as of this morning, a recent decision from Judge Padfield on some of that commercial subclassification issue. So if any of you are involved with that, I will say there was a recent decision on that issue just this morning. But you can always find all our case decisions on our webpage under our judges' decisions. We are continuing to post those. As well as we just went through a system update, so I feel like it should be seamless for everyone in the public. But if you encounter any issues while filing appeals, just always let us know. Try to make sure we keep up with that. I was just thinking about that too before we got to adjournment. Other than that, again, unless y'all have anything else for me, we're just at adjournment. So you would still need a motion and a second and a roll call for adjournment. But
I make motion.
I heard a motion. Second. Roll call. We'll start with our online people. Motion and a second for adjournment. Those in favor say aye. In roll call, Mr. Davis Gravely.
Aye.
Mr. J. Catnanny.
Aye.
Mr. Mark Parton.
Aye.
And our in-person members.
Aye.
Our presiding member. All right, that's it. Well, we are adjourned. Thank you all for joining today. Let me know. I'll hear for you if you should ever need me. That'll conclude today's. We'll put the recording of this meeting online as well if anyone needs it. But other than that, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All you folks have a good week.
You too.
Thank you, Robin.
Anytime.
See you.
All right, thanks, y'all. Here if you need me for anything else. Thanks for coming in. I thought I was like.